Hello and welcome to everyone joining us from New York City and from around the world for today's webinar. I am Kian Tajbakhsh, and as the coordinator of the Committee on Forced Migration at Columbia University, which has organized this event, I am delighted to welcome our distinguished panelists, who will discuss the lessons learned 5 years after the EU-Turkey agreement in 2016 stranded many migrants along the Balkan route. I would like to thank my colleague, Professor Lara Nettelfield, for putting together today's event and for moderating the panel. Professor Nettelfield is the Director of Graduate Studies at the Institute for the Study of Human Rights at Columbia University and is Senior Lecturer in the Department of Political Science. She is the author of a number of important works. In 2015, she co-authored Srebrenica in the Aftermath of Genocide, as well as the influential book Courting Democracy in Bosnia and Herzegovina, The Hague's Tribunal Impact in a Post-War State, both published by Cambridge University Press. Her research interests include human rights, forced migration, transitional justice. She is currently working on an oral history project, The New Humanitarians, about the refugee crisis in Europe and in the Middle East. And Lara has been an active member of the Committee on Forced Migration since its inception. Before I turn it over to Lara to introduce the speakers more fully, I would like to say a few words about the Committee on Forced Migration. The committee is an initiative of the Columbia Global Centers, led by Professor Safwan Masri, the Executive Vice President for Global Centers and Global Development. Columbia Global Centers works within countries that host large numbers of refugees, including in cities such as Amman, Istanbul, Nairobi, and Tunis. In response to the pressing challenges posed by the pandemic and forced migration, the Global Centers established the Committee on Forced Migration in 2018 to address this combined crisis. The committee brings together 50+ faculty from across Columbia's schools and affiliates who work on forced migration, as well as those who desire to create multidisciplinary academic and practical solutions. This initiative is one of a number of forced migration-related activities the Global Center supports, including the Columbia University Scholarship for Displaced Students, the Amman Mellon Foundation Global Center's Fellowship Program for Emerging Displaced Scholars, the New University in Exile Consortium, and a number of regionally focused forced migration-related programming hosted by our individual global centers. The goal of the Committee on Forced Migration is to maximize Columbia's ability to provide an institution-wide platform to engage, support, and share information across Columbia's community of faculty, students, and staff. We also act to convene and bring together the world's thought leaders around global migration. Today is the 10th event, part of a year-long online series entitled Forced Migration in a Post-Pandemic World. The series looks at the impact of this crisis on forced migration, both current and long-term post-pandemic effects, from the full range of academic disciplines. The events in our series feature eminent Columbia and external experts and voices from the front lines. Our webinar series will continue on March 30th, where Professor Lisa Anderson of Columbia University will lead a discussion on nationalism and the politics of open, closed borders in the context of the current pandemic. So I thank you all for joining us for this event, and I turn it over to Lara.
Thank you so much, Kian. Welcome, everyone. As you know, the EU-Turkey statement was signed on March 18th, 2016, and was aimed at halting the arrival of refugees and asylum seekers from Turkey to Europe, and ended up trapping thousands of people in the Eastern Aegean Islands. Over the past 5 years, the situation has deteriorated tremendously, and the pandemic has added another layer of rights violations and inequalities. So today's event, in the context of this speaker series, is an opportunity to hear directly from the human rights defenders on the front lines. So please allow me to introduce them. Efi Latsoudi is one of the founders of Lesvos Solidarity, a grassroots organization based on the Greek island of Lesvos. Lesvos Solidarity runs educational, psychosocial, and medical programs and advocates for the rights of refugees. She's also the founder of the Open Refugee Camp PICPA, an autonomous and self-run camp for vulnerable refugees. PICPA was forcibly closed by the Greek authorities in October of last year after 8 years of operation. For all of her tremendous advocacy efforts, she received the Nansen Refugee Award in 2016. Nasim Lomani is a human rights defender and migrants' rights activist working in Greece and in the EU for over a decade. He arrived in Greece nearly 2 decades ago as a 16-year-old from Afghanistan. Due to his personal history as a refugee, he's faced multiple border regimes, was held in detention, and survived numerous rights violations. After he settled in Greece, he joined several migrant solidarity groups, such as the Network for Social Support to Immigrants and Refugees and the Migrant Social Center in Athens. He has coordinated free language classes for migrants and refugees and has been a key organizer of the Athens Anti-Racist Festival. Since the long summer of migration of 2015, he's been an active participant in the colorful solidarity movement, which supports refugees and people on the move. Nasim was a part of this year's cohort of Colombia's Human Rights Advocates Program. We're very happy to have him. And he was also a recipient of the 2020 Oak Human Rights Fellowship from Colby College. And I'm happy to see people from Colby College in the audience. Rados Djurovic is the executive director of the Asylum Protection Center, a Serbian NGO providing legal and psychosocial aid to asylum seekers, refugees, and persons forced to migrate to Serbia. A lawyer by training, his thesis was titled "The Right to Asylum in Serbia." He's currently pursuing a PhD in international law at Belgrade University's Faculty of Law. Since 2007, he's been active professionally as a lawyer and a project manager in the field of refugee and asylum law in both domestic and international projects. And he's also one of the founders of the Asylum Protection Center. And last but not least, certainly, Nidzara Ahmetasevic is an activist and writer who's been advocating for the rights of asylum seekers and refugees for many years. Currently, she's the regional editor for the online magazine Kosovo 2.0. She has a PhD in media assistance in post-conflict countries from the University of Graz, Austria. Her focus as a journalist is on media development in post-conflict countries, hate speech, human rights, feminism, and migration. Her work has been published in The New Yorker, The Guardian, The Observer, Al Jazeera, and various other outlets. She's been working on the Balkan Route since 2015, exposing violations of human rights in different countries. Since the crisis began in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2018, her focus has shifted to Bosnia and to emphasizing solidarity networks there. In 2015, she was a fellow at the Alliance for Historical Dialogue and Accountability at our own Colombia's Institute for the Study of Human Rights. In January of this year, the Frontline Defenders took up Nidzara's case after she reported to the police the gendered online harassment she's been experiencing on social media and threatening messages she's been receiving from unknown men for several months now. Just a couple of weeks ago, on March 6th, she was arrested and detained in Sarajevo for over 5 hours, ostensibly for filming the police, which, however, is not illegal. We know that many activists in the region have been the target for their work speaking out for the rights of people on the move. Before I hand over to Efi, and today we're going to kind of move north along the Balkan route. We're going to hear from Efi first, and then Nasim, and then Rados, and lastly Nidzara. But I wanted to thank our sponsors, other sponsors, the Harriman Institute and the Institute for the Study of Human Rights. And I'd also like to thank Barnard's Human Rights Program, the Forum on Migration, and the Program in Hellenic Studies for co-sponsorship and for getting out the word about today's event. And lastly, thank you to my colleagues, Kian, Linda, Marika, and Maggie, without whom today wouldn't happen. And of course, our panelists. Efi, I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's really important to connect under the circumstances of the Balkan route. I'm an activist and participating in the solidarity movement since 2005. And because I received some questions about solidarity movement in Greece, actually what the solidarity in Greece was really acting in a very hostile and adverse environment. That's how also I met Nasim throughout many years ago. the thing that we were trying to do is to connect the different groups from Lesvos to Athens, to the other islands, and try to denounce pushbacks. Pushbacks was a practice since many, many years, monitoring the deaths and talk about the deaths and monitoring the violation of human rights. And the criminalization of solidarity was the rule in Greece, as well as detention and deprivation of rights of the refugees. So what happened in 2015 actually is a change of this scenery. In 2015, we have less pushbacks. We have the development of an international solidarity movement throughout the beaches of the islands, throughout Greece. Solidarity did a miracle under the circumstances to deal with the humanitarian crisis of thousands of people arriving through the islands. We have for me, it's very important to mention that solidarity at this point becomes, at least how we experience it for the first time on the island, as something that it was a value again, something that made us all proud of being part of. So, of course, there are many, many questions about what kind of solidarity, how political it is. There are many people involved at this point, which is huge, that are basically coming from the charity, humanitarian work, and the political commitment is not always there. But we see that people are affected because interacting with the violation of rights, in one point we understand it's not only about food, it's not about a blanket, you understand that it's something bigger. And I think this affected many, many people that they came just to help. Of course, there are many, many different groups, many, many different people. It's an adverse, a very diverse environment. For me, the 2015, it is a miracle. There is a movement happening, and it's very, very important for the island. And it's the first time that the legislation changes, and we don't have the criminalization of solidarity groups and activism is not. It's not so not so present at this point, because the law changes, and we have also with all this positive, attitude towards refugees, we have more people being involved, and also the legislation changes, and we can transfer refugees if it's not for profit, which was not the case before. At this point, also, I must tell you that because for me it's very important. When we started PICPA started in 2012 as a self-organized, open, decent shelter for refugees. At this point, there are many people from Lesvos Island that they are afraid of refugees. They are feeling that we had the financial crisis. Okay, so these people were like, okay, why are they coming? What is happening? Where should they stay? When they started participating in the camp, and they started supporting these people with a view of this humanitarian support, bringing food, clothes, the ambience and the attitude on the island changed. So people started to become proud of being part of this, of being in solidarity. And actually, at this point that we have Golden Dawn, we have the fascist party attacking people in Athens and also in Lesbos in the streets, there is a visibility of the attacks, and many people are denouncing it, which really was a crucial point, because we were all devastated by the fact that the fascist party enters the Greek parliament at this point. So what happened with the EU-Turkey deal? We have a EU-Turkey deal comes in one point in 2016, as we said, Lara, 18th of March, to stop first of all, to create again, to bring back the criminalization of solidarity movement and of activists, bring back the detention, because the first measure is we close Moria, we close the doors, so people are confined inside Moria. This changed after 2 months because there was a threat of Moria being burned by the people that were locked inside. And then, of course, as you know, the whole island becomes a prison for the refugees. So solidarity starts to be targeted, attacked, and there's a huge stigmatization of NGO, civil society, and solidarity movement. Nowadays, in Lesvos, it's like when people use the word solidarity, it's like an insult for the locals. It goes to this direction. At the same time, the same day that they announced the closure of the EU-Turkey deal, we have the announcement of the closure of Tikva camp, the first time that we face a huge threat of eviction was back then, the same day, as well as the old HRAP. That means that whatever had to do with decent human conditions is already decided that should stop at this point with the EU-Turkey deal. What happened after, because he experienced this announcement on the island, it was a very dramatic shift at this point. And what we were expecting is that this deal is not going to have a long life. It was a huge violation of human rights, a deviation of the right of asylum. So we didn't expect that this will last long. What happened is that we were expecting a massive deportation, especially by Syrians. This somehow we avoided for many reasons, and because of many also legal actors that they were fighting against these deportations. But although this never happened, we have a disaster politically on the level of islands and of Greece, because all the rights, the rights of the refugees are going. I mean, they are severely attacked. At the same time, we have the fact that the people are confined on the island, and that creates a huge tension and xenophobia and racism on the islands, which is the main consequence. And this now somehow goes together. From one hand, we have refugees that are living in conditions that are inhuman, and the conditions are used as a deterrence measure that no more people will come. At the same time, at this moment, we have a lot of pushbacks. The mental health from the first time of the EU-Turkey deal, mental health and health of refugees are severely affected. And the biggest disaster of this context is the fact that we lost the local societies. There is so much hostility, hatred, and xenophobia against refugees, of course, fed by the media, fed by the politicians on the islands and the central government. But this is the level of violence that we experienced last March, when, I mean, only one example is that boat that was, it was after also the starting of the pandemic. We were in this point that the pandemic was starting to spread. And we have locals stopping a boat by landing, full of people, full of women as well, pregnant women and children, asking to take them back, actually asking for push them back, the authorities, or drown them. And of course, a lot of violence and attacks against solidarity people, solidarity NGOs, solidarity groups, and a lot of so this goes to day that we have huge numbers of pushbacks. Again, EU is not, I don't know, really, pushbacks are illegal, but they're happening every day and they are happening by land. So I don't know where we go with this. So the EU-Turkey deal somehow legitimized all this in the mind of everything could be possible. If they didn't manage to do it like rotation officially to Turkey and announcing Turkey as a safe third country, which is okay. They did it now by the pushback and all these strategies that they are practicing every day. We have, and I'm finishing, we have a huge camp like Moria, a symbol of violation of human rights and torturing of so many people. And at the same time, when Moria is banned last September, during the pandemic, we have people living in the streets of Lesvos for several days. And then they create a camp which is like replicating Moria disgraceful conditions. In the next military camp is shooting place. So I mean, the result of the EU-Turkey deal, I think what happened and the consequences is even more severe and threatening for the civil society and the human rights activists than we were expecting. And because you mentioned the Nansen Award, when I received this award, I received it because I believe that is coming back. This award acknowledges the solidarity work of the people of Lesbos. Now Pikpa is closed, is evicted, that was awarded this with Nansen Award. And the EU-Turkey deal that from this point on we were talking about stopping it because it's a red line, it's still there. Thank you.
Efi, thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Nasim now.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I also, first of all, want to thank you for this invitation. It's a huge pleasure to be to this panel together with Efi, with Nidzara and Rados. Thank you, Lara, for the organizing this. And I have the honor also to be part of the Human Rights Advocate program of Columbia University this semester. So it's a big pleasure to be here. I am based in Athens. I'm coming from Afghanistan. Yeah, I'm close to 2 decades living in Greece, but my personal history of migration is so much longer. I have been in many other countries before ending up in Greece, in the border of Europe. Yes, so I will try to speak on my perspective on the situation. As a migrant, as a refugee, as a person who is coming from one of the most conflicted country, it's called Afghanistan, a country that it's the last war is lasting 20 years, the war on terrorism, which the Western world is again bringing in power the same people that they went to war with, Taliban. I mentioned this because it is quite important. I believe that to understand migration is really important to understand the reasons that migrants and refugees, they are coming. And also it's important to mention that the last people who are coming toward Europe, the majority of them, they are Afghans. Almost 70% of the people who are reaching Europe via Greece and Lesvos, and also the 70% of the population at the moment in Moria 2, in the European Guantanamo, European concentration camp is refugees who are escaping war, which directly the Western world, which directly European Union, NATO, and US is involved to this war. Just to talk about the solidarity movement in Europe, in Balkan Route, in Greece, I think it's quite important to give a very short information maybe about in which time and in which place it took place, or it happened during the last years. If you start from 2015 and 2016, which was the quite important time of the summer of migration, quite important time of the collapse of the European border regime, the collapse of the European anti-migration policies and the fortress Europe. As you know, Europe has always a lot of different levels of management of different kind of or different types of crisis. If we talk about refugee crisis in 2015 and 2016, and only on that concept, you can explain a little bit also what does it mean the European Union agreement with Turkey. How we analyze it in Greece, at least, in a country which is the first, one of the first or one of the main entrance of the refugees toward Europe, a country on the border of Europe, a country which is basically transit for all of those refugees that are trying coming from Africa and Asia to Middle East to Europe. And this plan has two basic scales, probably. It is an agreement with a country like Turkey, like all the other agreements of European Union with the third countries that they are making on this big plan of externalization of the borders, or on this plan of how finding countries or even dictators to make deals. Erdogan probably is not the first dictator that the European Union is making deals or agreement on migration management. Before that, we know Gaddafi. Before that, we know other countries and even states that openly violated human rights or violating refugees' rights. But that was the first part of the deal, or that was the first, I don't know how to describe it, it's the first goal of the deal. The second goal of this deal is a third country within European Union, which I could say Greece. This deal has this plan to stop as much more people they can stop them in Turkey, and then have a third country within European Union to stop them to not arrive to the rest of Europe. So that's also, you can explain why European Union, a part of the 6 billion euro that they give to Erdogan, they give another 3 billion euro to Greece on management of refugees or on management of the border regimes in European Union. So literally it was a plan which it continues to trap people in Greece, in one country member of European Union, create tens of camps, hotspots, or places which are quite similar to one of the known camps of Moria. All of the camps, they are more or less the same situation. And people will be stuck here, they will be trapped here, and they will be pushed in a lot of different ways to be sent back to home countries. They will be sent back to third countries. And of course, they will be pushed enough to accept that they will be returned back, even voluntarily back to Syria or Afghanistan or other countries. I think this was the situation, and we can see even now the consequences of this agreement that we are on the 5th years of implementing this shameful and this very problematical deal between European Union and Turkey. And of course, there is a lot of other legal and violation of international agreements, conventions, and also human rights conventions. For the first time, European Union, for example, also nationalized, or how you say, make it from a personal individual right to asylum to protection to a national political collective situation, which means that you for the first time the Geneva Convention is not used anymore. So you don't have a personal right to apply for asylum or a personal right to seek asylum and to be protected. First of all, there will be a political decision on political level, which they will decide which country, which places are considered as a country, and then they will decide if you will have right to apply for asylum, if you will have the right to be protected, or if you have right to be safe and also respected your rights and respected as refugees. So this is a continuation of the same anti-migration policies. This is a continuation of the same war that is happening in those countries and also here. The same mechanism that they use NATO on war in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, in Africa, and they use also NATO, Frontex, national armies, national guards to the war against these people that they are coming toward Europe. So that's why we have also the increasing number of dead people on the crossing of the borders. So this is the situation that followed the summer of migration. But at the same time, I think it was really important. It was really powerful. The movement of the people, the movement of the ordinary people, simple people. It was not only organized people. It was not only political initiatives. It was a lot of young people, a lot of people that they felt that the policies of European Union is not expressing them. They felt that they have to do something else. They felt that they have to, that they understand that just beside them in Syria, there is a huge war happening and they cannot just follow the policies. So those people, they came on the field of accepting and receiving refugees who are reaching Europe toward Greece on the shores of the Aegean islands, like Lesvos, Chios, Samos, and other islands. And they have been in all the and all the long way of the Balkan Route and until ending to the cities of Western and Central Europe. I have been part of this whole movement. I am so lucky to be on the field. I'm so lucky to meet all of those people, and I think it has been really significant and important and powerful movement. In Athens, if I go to more specific examples, the first movement of solidarity happens when a group of 500 people, they arrived from the islands of Lesvos in Athens. And this is also the critical point or connection between refugees crisis or refugees situation and Greek financial crisis. So those people, they arrived in Athens, and one of the main reasons that they couldn't move immediately, it was because of the capital control. So they couldn't get the financial support that they needed from their family. I don't know how. So they were stuck in Athens, so they camp in one of the central parks of Athens with the tents, and they were waiting to prepare themselves to continue their trip. And in a very small call of some people, hundreds of people, they joined, and they organized solidarity to those people. They demand together with refugees to find a solution. They pushed the government to seek solution for those people. And also it's quite important to mention that the result of that 50 days of struggle of those 500 refugees, mostly from Afghanistan and solidarity movement in Athens, the first transit camp of Athens were created, the Leonas camp, which is remain one of the best comparing to all others, and the only one which is in the city center of Athens. It was created in 9 days. It was that much important, and that was that much powerful movement of solidarity and movement of refugees on move, people on move and refugees, transit refugees that they wanted to reach Europe. They pushed at that time government of Syriza to create this camp, and it remains one of the good ones. After that, this solidarity movement divided in many small groups. One of the groups went to Lesvos, that they opened a reception center on the shore of Lesvos. They start receiving boats that they were coming, and they were giving some basic solidarity support to those people. They create a place that they could change clothes, they could eat, and they could continue then to the city of Lesvos, Mytilene, and then they could come here. The other parts, they divided also in small groups, and they start creating housing projects to accommodate, to house refugees that they were homeless. They were arriving from the islands, and they needed few times, they needed few days, weeks to stay in Athens, then to move to the rest of their trip. With this movement of those people who are not only Greek local people, it was not only organized political initiative, it was also a lot of people coming from all Europe. It was a lot of people coming even from US, from Canada, from Australia, from around the world, and they were participating and helping. They create almost 12 housing projects in Athens and many others in Thessaloniki and other cities, and they were housing around 2,500 people who were either homeless in the city, or they were living in horrible conditions in camps in the area. The point is that the whole movement continued until very recently, not only in Greece, that we have this huge attack of the government on the criminalization of the solidarity movement, but also in Europe. So all of those housing, they were evicted, they were closed during the last 1.5 years. But also, as Efi mentioned, many of those solidarity movements from Europe have been criminalized. Many of them, they have been sentenced, they have been charged, because exactly they were fighting against the whole mechanism or the whole machine of European Union, that they are killing, they are punishing, they are pushing back, they are detaining people. And of course, they are murdering some of those, they are murdering people on the sea. So they have been very much pushed. But to finish with the positive thing, all of those movements, they are still here. All of those people, they are still trying, even in difficult situation, even in pandemic, the time of pandemic, they are trying to stand, and they are trying to resist together with refugees. I think all of those movements were existed, they fight, they struggled, because exactly there was also the movement of people, refugees, the movement of those people that are struggling. They were even they knew that no one would say, no media will show them, that they were still, and they are still fighting and demonstrating in closed camps, which is in permanent lockdown in the camps. So that means that the struggle is still going on. I stop here and then we continue with questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasim. Rados?
Yeah, hi to everyone. Thanks for calling. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the event. Can you hear me, or there is a problem with the net, with the connection? No, that's fine. Okay, so I can refer to the situation in Serbia, as Serbia is the following country on the Balkan migration route from Greece over Macedonia, North Macedonia, towards the European EU neighboring countries. And on that route, situation is really similar to the situation we heard about from our colleagues that were talking before me. So you have massive number of people entering Serbia daily, like in hundreds, and trying mostly to continue toward the EU. Serbia is the last frontier, literally, before entering into the Schengen EU zone. What that means? That means that actually Serbia is the country on the external borders of the EU, although being in Europe as European country. So situation is, deteriorating. And I may say that as a buffer zone, Serbia is just the place where people were staying because they're stuck, they are protected, they are unable to proceed in faster manner toward Western EU countries where they're looking for some kind of protection. Roughly around 150 to 200 people per day are entering country from the North Macedonia, actually coming from Greece, because they want to continue further on to look for a safe place for starting their new lives. A similar number of people are pushed back daily from EU northern Serbian neighbors, from Hungary, from Croatia, and from Romania. So you have these de facto illegal, unlawful practices of pushbacks, which means that actually people are being prevented to claim asylum on the EU soil and pushed back to Serbia out of any kind of procedure, disrespecting any kind of bilateral treatments, and without informing Serbian authorities about that. People are even beaten, maltreated. There are serious signs of torture and inhuman treatment of people, and they are then being sent over the border to Serbia. So those people are literally returned and staying in difficult situation in the country that is trying to ignore their presence. So having in mind the specific situation, geographical situation, and also political of Serbia, Serbian authorities are on one side trying to respond to the demands of their neighboring countries of EU to hold down the migration, to stop and protect the borders of the EU. On the other side, they're looking for ways how to avoid creating Serbia as a parking lot, as a buffer zone, as a new Calais in terms of migration, in order to avoid people staying for a longer time or permanently in Serbia. So this is also kind of political struggle that also has its own effect on the situation and rights and position of refugees in the country, in the local areas. So at any moment you have around 8,000 to 10,000 people, some of them, like 6,000 of them, in the camps. And Serbia is intentionally avoiding to build new reception facilities in order to send a clear message to people that they don't have where to stay. So many of them are staying in de facto some kind of shelters along border zones of the north. And it really, who knows, who is aware about the situation in France, in Calais region, then the situation in Serbia, in northern Serbia, is quite really similar to the situation one can find there. So people are on their own, literally. There are a lot of kids, a lot of women. They're also kind of smuggling, really well developed. And there are threats on each step for these poor people. Institutions choose to ignore the situation and needs and plight of these people. So it's really difficult to access asylum, being refugee in Serbia. So you have a lot of bureaucratical steps in order to approach to the asylum and enter in the legal frames, get some kind of a legal stay in Serbia. So most of people that are stranded are people staying in shady zone. So they don't exist in the eyes of the system, although some of them are accommodated in this kind of transit camps. Limited access to procedure is taking people into a serious risk from harm, from smugglers, from traffickers, human traffickers, from criminals, but also for corrupted representatives of institutions or local authorities that are looking, all of them, for some kind of benefit and to misuse the position and plight of these people. I would say that beside that, in parallel, at the moment, we have raising of animosity, raise of animosity and xenophobia also in Serbia. In 2015, at that moment, Serbia was an outstanding country in sense of positive and pro-humane response to the crisis. At that time, it was really promising for refugees to get some kind of protection in Serbia. Even authorities was supporting some kind of humane approach. But due to the situation and to the media reporting, but also due to the political tensions in the country and pre-election period in Serbia, situation is changing rapidly. So you have situation in 2020 and in 2021 really discouraging in terms of raising prejudice and fears among the locals related to the refugees and migrants. Also, what is really important is that actually government now is not advocating for positive or humane approach, and every kind of political group is looking for its own space, how to use and exploit migration for their own sake and benefits, addressing voters. So situation is getting out of the control. You have situation where people are stranded. You have a situation where institutions are ignoring the situation, and they are misinforming the media and the public about the real situation in the field that is taken. Then that's producing really xenophobic thoughts and opinion among more and more people in the local communities. We are more and more Hungarian-like in terms of understanding migration, in terms of raising fears and animosity toward refugees and migrants. Concerning the solidarity movement, I may say that this solidarity was massive in 2015, and it came originally from people, from common citizens. People were coming to help refugees. They were coming to parks along the migration routes. They were really showing a strong solidarity, probably linked with the nourishing memories from the previous wars that raged across Yugoslavia. And those memories were fresh, and people understood why refugees were coming. And this is something different from the other countries along the route, I would say. And at that time, it was really something that was showing the good face of the communities. But in 2020, with the lockdowns, also with COVID problem, with this pre-election period in Serbia, with false news and sensationalistic media reporting, this public opinion started to change. Concerning NGOs or volunteers or people that were helping refugees, we have a small number of those people devoted in 2021. And this also is really important to understand related to Serbia, that actually Serbian social movements or grassroots are really, and this network is really weak in any sense, not related only to refugees, but in any kind of organizing. Serbia actually inherited socialistic and communistic models that were preventing any kind of social cohesion or solidarity on the local level. although some would expect different situation related to the socialism and communism, but not. In order to control the citizens, the country during the communistic regime was trying to prevent any kind of social organizing on its own. So people were prevented from building local social grassroots organizations. They were controlled under the trade unions and some kind of forms of social organizing that actually included strong control by the state and the less enthusiasm and devotion of locals. In that sense, we are far different from Greece or from Italy or from Spain, where you have strong social ideas nourished in among locals and people willing to engage in social and humane manner. This is lacking in Serbia, and the response is just based on a few grassroots. And we are hoping that students and volunteers nowadays, especially students that were also taking part in our activities, are future strength and the future fundament for building such kind of understanding and social cohesion in that sense. So this is in brief about the situation in the country that is changing rapidly. I may say that Serbia is the country that didn't have, as a country, as a society, didn't have any intercontinental migration before 2015. So actually everything is developing really, really in fast manner, unpredicted manner, and it's causing tremendous effects in the field. Unfortunately, we are going toward restrictions toward refugees, toward xenophobia. And my opinion is that we lost the first possibility that we had until 2020, from 2015 to 2020, to build on that initial solidarity that came through the common citizen who was aware of the plight of refugees. Now, actually, there is no that trust, and we lost this first, and I would say, unfortunately, the only opportunity for building a more tolerant society in terms of accepting refugees and migrants across from other continents.
Rados, thank you very much. Nidzara?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me a chance to talk about the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina and be part of a panel with other people from Greece and Serbia. Many of the things they have said, I can only repeat, especially what Rados said, as well as Serbia. Bosnia is the last country on the route before people enter the Schengen zone or European Union. And as well as in Serbia, the situation in Bosnia every day is getting worse and worse. Bosnia, unlike other countries on the Balkan route, was not that active until the end of 2017 and beginning of 2018. What made Bosnia more active and interesting for people on the move who are passing through the Balkans was the moment when the police from Croatia, in one of the pushbacks toward Shid, killed a girl, Madina Husseini. It was November 2017. Madina was trying to enter Croatia and European Union together with her family. It was a big family. As I remember, she was 6 years old. And when they were pushed back and forced to walk on the train tracks. The train came, Madina was too slow, and the train killed her. That was the moment for many people who were on the move at that moment to start thinking about changing the route. And Bosnia was the only remaining solution for them, because everything else was closed by the EU border police and Frontex that became more and more active since 2015 at guarding the Fortress Europe, which they are doing even today, and that they are already coming to the Balkans, even though the Balkans, as you may know, none of the countries is still a member of the EU. When I say none, I'm talking about North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia, and Kosovo. In all of these countries, the situation is very difficult at the moment, and is highly controlled and directed by the European Union and through their partner agency, International Organization for Migration, and organizations like UNHCR and Danish Refugee Council, who are in Bosnia. They're being given the main role in the process that European Union is calling managing migrations. So in Bosnia, IOM is the lead organization. I have to remind, and I guess that many of the people who are following this panel and many of the people in the world generally forgot much about Bosnia or never knew, but Bosnia is the only semi-protectorate in Europe, probably one of the few semi-protectorate, I cannot remember many, in the world. Being a semi-protectorate means that we are like a state, but we are not a state. That we are like a people, but we are not a people. That we deserve to be human beings, but we actually don't deserve to be human beings. We are here only for European Union to do whatever they want to do. At the moment, they want to stop all the migrants from moving toward the European Union. And not only the migrants, but not that they want to stop, they want to pick and choose who can come. So we, as a white Europeans, we are allowed to come and do a dirty job for them in European Union. If you are not that white, and if you are not that similar to them, you have to stop. And you will be stopped by force if it is needed. And that is what's happening every day. I met over these many years. I was in Greece for some time, then in Turkey, in Serbia, but of course, most of the time I'm here in my home country, in Sarajevo, and I met many people coming from Lesvos here. I have prepared a couple of pictures, but I have some technical issues. So if I can ask a host to help me, because what I want to show you is how does it look, this road toward Europe? How I describe it is from hell to hell. These are Afghan families who in September, after the Moria camp was burned down, they continued their way toward Europe and they came to Bosnia. This is the gate of the family camp run by IOM, financed by EU in Sarajevo. One day, people from the neighborhood of this camp, or local people, started calling the Solidarians in Sarajevo to come and help, because about 200 people, mostly families, were left here. All of these people just came from Moria and from Lesvos. So basically, they came to another hell, or as many of them will say it, Gehennem. And Bosnia is Gehennem for them. These families are until today in Bosnia, if we can go to another slide. And they squat, if I can say, in one village at the border in Bosnia, but the border with Croatia, called Bosanska Bojna. Recently, I spoke with some of the people who are stuck there. And it's about 180 people, all of them from Afghanistan, and all of them are big families, including many sick people and people with disabilities, people who went through war and different traumas. Since September, when they reached this border, they're trying almost daily to enter Croatia and to ask for asylum. They are refugees. They have been pushed back so many times that most of them, if you ask them how many times they were pushed back, they don't know. because they're trying every day. They're not only pushed back, they're beaten in a savage way. They're humiliated in every possible way. And then they send them back to Bosnia. In Bosnia, IOM, UNHCR, and other partner organizations prepare for them camps according to European standards. If we can go to a next slide. Because we are now in America, this is what European standards are, if you don't know. We can go also to the next and the next. These are camps European Union is financing in Bosnia. These are not family camps. It's mostly for single men, but family camps are not much better. There is no hot water in these camps. Like now with the COVID situation, there is nothing to protect these people. The only thing that IOM could have imagined and created for them to protect them, and they push the local government to do the same, is a lockdown. So at the moment, 2 camps are in complete lockdown. We do not know how many people and if anybody inside is really sick or not, and we are not sure if they are getting a proper medical care, because everything that is happening inside of the camps is inside of the camps, and people are discouraged to talk about that. Not only residents of these camps, but also IOM prevents local journalists and human rights defenders to enter the camps and to report about this horrible situation, this dehumanizing situation. So where Nasim said that Moria is a concentration camp, no, the entire Bosnia is a concentration camp. And that's why I say from one hell to another hell. And when I say it's a concentration camp, I think that I have a complete credibility and I know what concentration camp is, because 25 years ago, the genocide was committed in this country, and we did have many concentration camps. Just recently, one of my friends who is survivor of one of these camps that was based in Prijedor area, he wrote a post on his Facebook saying that some of the camps created by IOM and with the money from EU at the moment in Bosnia are worse than the concentration camp that he was locked in. However, people keep coming and keep dreaming, and many of them do find a way to enter the EU. And if we can go to another slide. All over the Bosnia, at every moment, we have at least 10,000 people, and that is official. So you can imagine that it's much more. Around 6,000 people are in these IOM-run camps. Now we have even some camps that are run together with IOM by the state government. In general, the government, any level of and when I say any, Bosnia as a semi-protectorate and a Frankenstein state, as some professors of law here in Bosnia call it, have something, we have many levels of the government, to put it in that way. We have 3 presidents, so you can imagine what do we have beside that. In general, the governments that we have at any level are not interested in any human being migrant and being a citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I just to illustrate, I can tell you that we are one of the few countries that did not even order vaccines against the COVID. So not that they didn't arrive, they didn't order them because they don't know who should do it. However, they're not interested at all in anything that has to do with migrants, except what European Union tells them to do. And they tell them to humiliate the people and criminalize them. So those people who are not in these beautiful camps are living outside of the camps. This is one of the shelters in all the train wagon in Zenica city. That's the middle kind of like Bosnia. The next slide is from one of the makeshift camps in the forests in Bosnia. This one is close to Velika Kladuša, so close to the border area with Croatia, but we have many all over the country. In Sarajevo, people are sleeping under the bridges, in all abandoned houses, everywhere, like literally people are everywhere. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is a very painful picture for me, taken by one of the local people in one of the villages close to the border. This is a family that was just pushed back. They were so tired, they couldn't walk anymore. And the only thing they could do, they just lay down on the ground. They had a couple of these plastic bags to put the children in. And this is how the local people discovered them in the morning, sleeping on the ground, beaten. Very often, Croatian police and the Frontex takes their clothes, takes their stuff, food, burns them down, and destroys their phones. And then they push them toward Bosnia through the forests, which are very dangerous because we have many minefields left after the Bosnian War, and they have to walk back. People who are living in the villages close to the borders, where pushbacks are often happening, are listening screams every day for 3 years. Screams and seeing beaten people. This is what is coming to Bosnia from European Union. And can we go to the next slide, please? This is something after the one of the camps, Lipa camp, was burned down last winter, and people were completely humiliated who were there, left there with no care. This is the message they left to all of us. And I think this is a very important message, very often forgotten, especially by those who are creating these camps and who are creating these conditions. They forget that the people on the move are just like you, whoever you are. And that is happening in Bosnia. Together with people on the move, the process of dehumanization is happening also for local people, especially Solidarians and people who are trying to do something to show that they are still human and that they still can be and that we're all equal. And unlike Lesvos or many other countries, in 2018, people in Bosnia were not afraid of the refugees because all of us are refugees, are migrants, and Bosnia is a country, a European country with biggest number of refugees and migrants at the moment, and we welcomed them. Even until today, many people, especially in villages all over Bosnia, are opening their homes and accepting people on the move and showing what is really solidarity, not a charity. It's really, really solidarity. It's very genuine and very beautiful to see it. However, this dehumanizing approach from the EU creation of the concentration camps and encouragement toward the hate policies and hate speech by the politicians in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is very often very similar to something we can hear in the West and Western countries, is what makes many people who continue showing their solidarity doing that in secret, or being under the pressure, constant pressure by different groups, being groups which are close to the governments, any level of the governments, or vigilante groups that are connected all over the region, including Serbia, Croatia, but also with some European ultra-right groups. And recently we had a visit from AfD, so the German ultra-right group, to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they came here to show interest in the migration situation. However, at the end, I have to say that what is happening in Bosnia with the migrants and refugees is almost full responsibility of the European Union. Because Bosnia, as well as other countries in the region, do want to become members of the EU, and in order to be a member of the EU, which we will never probably manage to achieve, we do have to obey. And obeying at this moment, Brussels, means that we have to show our ugliest face to our people on the move. being a survivor of the genocide and being a witness of a fascism in Europe and the fascists, I can say that the face of Balkans can be very, very ugly, and I'm afraid of what can happen if the Fortress Europe do not fall down. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidzara. We have quite a few, thank you, and thank you to all of the panelists. We have quite a few questions in the chat. I'm going to start with Aida Hozic's question. Unfortunately, she had to leave, but we had a similar question. So first, she notes that EU officials have been meeting with Erdogan, seeking to further bolster cooperation with Turkey and extend the current arrangements. But her question is about the pandemic, and she says that the pandemic has worsened both political conditions for changing the terms of the conversation about refugees, in addition to refugees' living conditions. Could you all tell us a little bit more about efforts to provide medical care for refugees in these circumstances? And I think, Rados, that maybe there was perhaps more reason to be slightly more optimistic in Serbia than perhaps in other countries in the region. Who wants to go first? Rados, do you want to start?
Yeah, just to refer to that, what you said, Lara, we got today first refugees and asylum seekers receiving vaccines, but it was not the easy thing to reach. Of course, and this is most important for the audience to know that actually only efforts that can be made in the system that is ignoring people and trying to ignore their needs is a legal way. So, and media way. So through the proper legal interpretation and pressures we undertook, and also we managed to secure first vaccines for the refugees and asylum seekers, and we set some kind of a precedent for the future. So in that sense, it was important to raise this kind of legal effort and the action in order to push these things with vaccination further on. Otherwise, alone, they're misinformed, they're lacking information, they don't know what is vaccination, what is good, what is bad for them. They have many fears, and especially if they are in isolated camps. I mean, on refugees. If they are in transit isolated camps across the country, they are hardly to receive any kind of information. Beside that, you need to apply to the system, and you need a lawyer for that. I hope we managed to set some pattern for the future, and we are looking for the new invitations from the government for the vaccination for refugees in the following days. But this is anyway a good message, and actually it also is saying to us, like, proceed with your efforts. Although we are a small NGO and we have a limited capacity, we can reach some important things, and this is the one of the proofs for that, and it gives us strength to proceed. So in order to help people, at least in Serbia, what we realized is actually that you need to approach refugees and build some kind of how to say, social connections, and keep some real contact with refugees, and avoid some kind of project-based relation that is common. What that means? That means that in many cases, especially with big international organizations, you have projects being undertaken, but without this personal person-to-person approach, without showing some kind of solidarity, without building social links, and in that manner using social capital, I would say, you would have as locals in relation with the refugees. So those are promising steps, but just a few, of course, it raises concern about the future vaccination in the region. Those are just first steps. Yeah.
Thank you, Rados. Nidzara, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, and it's very important what Rados mentioned, and it's like very similar to what I wanted to say, and it's related to this project-based approach. However, in Bosnia, not even local people will be protected for a very long time from this, and at the moment, Bosnia They compare Bosnia at this very moment with Bergamo in Italy last year, and it's horror. It's like literally horror outside of my house, and people are dying in huge numbers. We do not know what's happening with the refugees. As I said, at least two camps at the moment are in a lockdown. Why we don't know? It's because Danish Refugee Council is in charge of the healthcare, and they are paid by the European Union. European Union, I didn't say in the previously, but European Union sent over the last 3 years about 100 million euros for IOM, DRC, UNHCR, and their partners to work in Bosnia on managing migrations. Along this money, many individual countries like UK, US, and Turkey, and some others, they're also sending money. And we don't know how much money was sent because nothing is transparent. So DRC do not give enough information about what's happening and about this health situation with the people. And instead of investing in building up and strengthening the local health system, which is completely dead, I have to say, EU decided to build up and strengthen and make rich DRC, who is in charge of the healthcare of the refugees and migrants in Bosnia, and nobody knows what is really happening.
Thank you, Nidzara. Nasim?
Yeah, first of all, a general comment about pandemic and refugees, or pandemic or migration. There is a contradiction situation from one side. One of the main stereotype on migration has broke during pandemic, because everyone was saying refugees are bringing disease to a safe, healthy situation. But now it's the opposite. It's like, at least in Greece, pandemic, the first corona cases comes from the week of show, I don't know how you say, fashion show from Italy, and then it comes from the Holy Land, not from refugees who are passing from the sea. So that was one thing. Or you cannot say openly refugees are carrying the sickness. It's much more complicated. But at the same time, pandemic or every crisis is quite, it's maybe everyone is the same in front of the virus, but not everyone is the same in front of the system or the health system. So poor people, including refugees, they are much more vulnerable to this situation. And of course, pandemic have been used very much, not only in Greece, in other countries, on limiting rights, freedoms, and also access to the basic services. And healthcare is one of the basic services that refugees should have. And especially when there is an excuse of the weakness or problem of the health system in Greece, for example. And the misuse of the situation has a very direct effect to the refugee situation. Like the pandemic in Greece, it started on March 2020. It ended up somewhere in May, but refugees camps are in permanent lockdown since then, a year, more than a year. They were just renewing every 15 days the continuation of the lockdown. So it's a lot of different level of limitation and also denial of access to healthcare. And we don't have yet vaccination of refugees in those conditions. And when we are talking about, there is all of this stay home, stay safe, keep distances, but how in a camp of around 10,000 people, for example, living in tents, how you can do that? So this is that's the situation here.
Thank you, Nasim. I'm going to go to a question from Elena Lilecki, who thanks you for all of these presentations. She has a few questions. I'll read them out. She says, can you elaborate a bit more on what you mean by criminalization of solidarity movements? In what specific ways has solidarity been criminalized, or what sort of actions have been criminalized? Do you want to take that first, and then I'll go on to the next ones? Anyone on the criminalization of solidarity movements? Efi?
Now, when we talk about criminalization of solidarity on the islands, for example, when you cannot be present anymore in the beach when people are arriving. We had cases that even journalists have been arrested because they didn't want to witness the pushbacks. So this is one thing. The other thing is that all the law now is kind of very treating NGOs as criminal and corrupted. We have extra measures of controls of NGO, like anti-corruption measures that makes clear that we have more controls of all the authorities against NGO people and solidarity and volunteers, all kinds of controls. And the main narrative is that confuses solidarity people and activists with smugglers. The main narrative is this. At the same time, when you are acting in a camp, you are not allowed to talk about the conditions. So there is already a way that the government is checking which NGOs are working in the camps. They are checking who is the good ones, but also the ones that they are there, that they are collaborating and they don't denounce the conditions. They still cannot talk about what is happening. So there are many ways to be criminalized, and we had cases in the past that people, if you transfer a refugee that you find in the streets, that stopped only in 2015. If you take a refugee in your car, you can go to the court because we support it. We had a journalist some months ago from Canada that he was in a place that the refugees had arrived, and he was arrested because he was giving water. They change the law, and when you are supporting somebody, which means solidarity, you give a water, you give a food, they say that you facilitate the entrance, and that is illegal. I mean, MSF, for example, Doctors Without Borders, they've been accused for creating an isolation area during the pandemic time, and they closed down. They've been attacked by the urban planning control, and they were threatened by a huge fine and imprisonment because they created what we needed, an isolation area for COVID time. There are many, many examples. And anyway, in the mind of the people, because of the narrative of the authorities, solidarity, activism, NGO are kind of smugglers, criminals. It's very difficult to deal with this.
Thank you, Efi. Nasim?
Again, a general comment about criminalization. I think it's part of the same anti-migration policy is again a kind of way to do all the crimes that European Union or state members are doing and to not have anyone witness. So the solidarity movement, the part of the work that they offer on direct solidarity to the people, one of the other things that they do is that they are the eyes of the civil society. They are the eyes of the people towards what is happening. So the main goal of the criminalization is to stop those people. Imagine in Mediterranean Sea, there is Frontex or the state members' boats doing pushback, or in the Aegean Sea, and then you have Sea-Watch, you have, I don't know, another rescue boat which is trying to rescue. So you cannot have both in the same time. So that's why they criminalize those people. That's why they don't want them to be there, because then they transfer the image of what is happening. And this is what is happening also. So also the way that they forbidden, for example, refugees to be able to take photos of their own condition. They are not prisoners, they're refugees supposedly living in open camps. So they are free to document their situation, but they don't want this because they don't want to have any proof or witness or anything that can show how much crimes they commit in the condition of the people in camps.
Thank you, Nasim. She has a follow-up question for you both as you're currently in Greece, and she's asking, where do returns to Turkey stand at the moment, taking into account recent hostilities between Greece and Turkey? And do you have any insights on plans or measures for integration and the relevant barriers recognized refugees are facing in accessing them?
So about the, I don't know if Nasim wants to, I mean, I will start, and of course, about the returns to Turkey.
You're on mute, Efi. You somehow muted you. Yeah,
Okay.
There you go. You're good.
So due to the pandemic, there is no connection between Greece and Turkey, but of course there are a lot of pushback every day. So we don't have returns, and the EU-Turkey deal is not functioning because of this this period. Anyway, there were not so many people. They didn't manage to deport so many. The intention was there to deport thousands of people, but of course these people have rights. Of course, what was happening was illegal. So somehow it didn't happen in the level the government and probably EU wanted to happen. But it's still there, it's pending. And I think the alternative to this is the pushbacks. Anyway. So it happens in the sea, it happens by the shore. The other thing about the integration, I mean, okay, first of all, it's very difficult to have integration without any plan. It's very difficult to have integration when people are living so long in such uncertainty and such horrible conditions. At the same time, the hostility that has been created also by the main discourse of the government, of the local authorities and the media, it's treating refugees as enemies, as problems. This is already an obstacle to integration. Okay, we have kids that they've been excluded from school for years, more than 2,000 kids inside the new Moria. They don't have access to regular, to normal public school. And all this, and when we try to register kids to school, we have the reaction of the locals with the support of the local authority, local parents like acting against the access to 5, 10 kids that manage to go to a public school. The general environment, as it is developed now, it's not supporting integration. Integration needs a central plan, needs collaboration of all the actors of the society, and needs a friendly environment to flourish.
Thank you, Efi. Nasim?
I think Efi said everything, but I also agree just to mention that when you create a policy to push the people to accept either to go voluntarily back home or to push them back, then you don't have an integration policies. And also, when you create a situation that no one wants to stay in camps forever, then you cannot talk about integration. Yeah, I think it's one of the most difficult time also on the relation between Greece and Turkey. As I don't know if you saw it, 2 days ago, there was another negotiation between Germany and Turkey directly on the management of migration. That means also a sense of how in another level migration is managed or agreed, and also then pushed Greece to follow the rules, and then Greece is doing by itself a lot of pushback, and they are proud of doing that. So then, yeah, it's quite difficult. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Nasim. Unfortunately, we are at time, so I'm just going to have one more question from Michelle Gaspari, which is for Nidzara and Rados. How do you see the history of the war impacting management of migrants in Bosnia and Serbia and the international narratives of the migrant situation? And she notes that this was on her mind because of the news of the landmine explosion in Croatia earlier this month.
Well, if I can, like it's very specific when it comes to Bosnia, and Bosnia probably went through the most horrible side of the war, like including genocide, and all that I was talking before, and that's when I said about the semi-protectorate status. And about also this EU integration process, which include many requirements for the country. It's all kind of because we went through the war, because we were so stupid to fight the war. So now this is what is happening. Also, why Bosnia is very dangerous, and why Bosnia was avoided for a so long time on the Balkan route, is because the existing landmines, as well as Croatia, especially the area where people are passing through. This is not the first incident like this. It happens a lot, and it happens like everywhere around Bosnia and Croatia since 2018. I have to say that I'm afraid that we do not even know how many people died in the minefields around Bosnia, Croatia. I don't believe there are any in Serbia, but there is a possibility of some in Kosovo area, but I haven't heard about that. But I know Bosnia and Croatia are very dangerous, and it will take us probably many years to establish how many people died in the forests, mountains, minefields, rivers, and lakes in the Balkans.
Rados?
So I would say that Balkans is the dark zone of the Europe. I would say it's really dead end of the Europe in some sense. It's left to its own citizens, inhabitants, to deal with various kind of problems, and was heavily influenced by by European powers along the history. So this is really troubled region where people are constantly in some kind of antagonism, wars, killings. And this is something that is common for more 100 years, I would say, like for more than 600 years. And actually, interests of the big powers are reflecting through the conflicts of small people, nations living in the Balkans. On the other side, related to migration, I would say, beside this kind of deaths and this kind of injuries happening due to the remnants of the war machines along the borders and these bombs and all what existed. In terms of, we don't have, I would say, any other link to be used against migrants, or some kind of previous experience that is being used against migrants by the police or army. I would say that this kind of inhuman treatment of refugees and migrants and exiles by police of all countries across the Balkan route, and more in Bosnia, Serbia, North Macedonia, is a result of ordered violence from the top of those decision-making powers in the country and in the state, linked with some other strategies, etc. So people in the field are using this kind of violence, first because they're acting in a lawful manner. Many of them has their own psychological and other problems, maybe coming from the war. Some are former soldiers or police officers. Maybe in that sense they have traumas and they have some kind of prejudice they're trying to use. They're using against the refugees. On the other side, wars reflected, influenced these horrible effects of wars in Yugoslavia. Actually served to common citizens to have more compassion and understanding for the reasons why refugees are coming here. So in general, it gives some kind of a positive effect among common citizens that are mostly quiet, silent. They're not getting into the public, into media against refugees. But as Nidzara said, people in the villages who suffered war, who know what is the war, are helping people. They're acting person toward person manner, like human to human. So those are positive effects. We can build understanding because of this recent tragedy we had. So it's not used against refugees. Only traumas of those that are using force, exercising force, like police officers and army soldiers, can be used against refugees in a negative manner. What is frightening is the practice that we have on the borders of Balkans or former Yugoslavia. So you have countries that didn't experience wars in the 90s, like Hungary, like Romania, like some other countries that are now excessively using force and treating people in the manner really similar to the Nazi regimes were treating Jews and other minorities on the racial grounds. So this is really frightening when you receive some kind of statements of people facing some torture by the Hungarian police officers and army soldiers or by Romanians. You are really afraid that new Holocaust can happen really unexpectedly towards people of different language, different skin, race. And this is not eradicated after the Second World War in Europe, especially in Central European countries. Those countries that were not perceived as those linked to the Nazi regimes, but as countries that were actually on the side of allies at the end, but didn't get along with what their governments were doing in the period of the Second World War. So you have strong racial antagonism that you see on the borders of the former Yugoslavia and Balkans. But concerning the experience we had with the former wars in Balkans, it had some positive even effects for the common citizen to understand and to get some kind of empathy toward the refugees. I believe it's like that. This is what we were seeing in the field. And actually, the worst possible things are coming from the EU neighboring countries. And those are really strong and disappointing messages. You know, now you have those demands from these small countries on the Balkans to undertake some unlawful actions in order to protect Fortress Europe. And you see it in the field. You know, with the death of Medina, we are participating in that case before the European Court for Human Rights, together with colleagues from Croatia. We also managed to get proofs for the starting of that kind of legal procedures. We saw this kind of interference of greater policies in preventing migration toward the EU that are frightening us, you know. And Balkans remains some kind of a territory, tribal territory that can be easily controlled by the far stronger and politically influential European Union and its member states. So.
Thank you so much, Rados. I see that we need to perhaps have another webinar in the future just dealing with the EU and EU policies in the region. I want to thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your work on the front lines. We hope that this will be the first conversation of many. I know I would like to do whatever I can to help foster cooperation in the region. As someone who's worked spent a lot of time in Bosnia and in Greece and lesser in Serbia and Croatia. Thank you. Thank you to all of our attendees today. And I'd like to remind you of the upcoming event that Kian mentioned at the beginning of the talk with Lisa Anderson on March 30th. And if you'd like to sign up for our listserv and get our events, please let us know. And we will say goodbye for today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.